Good evening and welcome to Sunday Charge Up for this Sunday, the 8th of October, 2023. David Lee is my name. I'm the chief coach and founder of Leeway Mind and Body Mastery. We like to say that a healthy body gives you a healthy mind, but you need a healthy mind in order to make the decision to have a healthy body. And what I'll be speaking about tonight is heroes and role models. And that can take on various connotations, if you like. For mine, I think the idea of a role model is someone that you model yourself on based upon your opinion or your impression, if you like, of the role they play in your life and how you would like to model yourself on those people. You can have some bad role models. People can follow, there are people who say, oh, he's a bad influence on his friends, that person. When women have actually said to me, oh, I don't like my husband hanging around these people, or this particular man, he seems to be a bad influence on him. One of the things I often think is you have to have it in you in order to have that influenced, if you like. From my perspective, a lot of what I want to talk to you about tonight within each of us are the seeds of greatness, and whether we do something with those seeds as far as fertilize them and let them grow and act in those areas, or whether we don't, is whether or not we get the outcome that we would like to have in life. Now, of course, as far as that outcome is concerned, we need to know exactly what it is that we're hoping to achieve. And so not in necessarily a lighthearted manner, but there will be some lighthearted things that I will bring up tonight as far as how we will speak about heroes. But I'm going to share my screen with you and just take you through some of the things that I'd like to take you through from the perspective of what a hero actually is and a role model for that fact. Now, for mine, obviously, one of my heroes is Arnie, and I worked on Australian Men's Fitness magazine for 6 years, and not only did I get to meet a couple of prime ministers along the way and number one athletes in most fields and most competitive sports around the world, but I also got to meet people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's one of my childhood heroes. I say I'm quite lucky in that everyone I've wanted to meet in life, and a lot of the things that I dreamed of achieving as a child, I say I'm lucky enough that those things have happened. But I say, and Arnold Palmer said, the harder he worked, the luckier he got. And I find it interesting that the harder I've worked in life and the more that I've gone towards the goals that I've wanted to achieve, the more readily I have achieved them, and I haven't given up on them. When I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, the one question I asked him, and each of the athletes, this is a question I always asked people, I'd say, can you tell me, what do you think is the reason why you have been so successful in what it is that you've achieved in the life you've had? And in some way, shape or form, the word drive always came into the way they believed. A lot of them said luck, but a lot of them said drive. And Arnold Schwarzenegger said to me, drive. And drive was the determination that he had and was driven to succeed. Now, we've all seen the documentaries. If we haven't, have a look at them. His book, Total Recall, is great autobiography of his, and he's also got a book that comes out in a couple of days called Being Useful. He talks about 7 different ways in order to be useful, and a couple of those I'll bring up tonight. But I'll get on to it. Of course, the first hero for mine, as far as I'm having a screen freeze here. Not sure what's going on. And I may have to abandon the slideshow altogether. Stop the share and then go from there, see what happens. So there we go with that. There we go. So clearly, I'm going to start with Conan the Barbarian. Now, as a child, when my brother and I were first, my oldest brother Kevin would have been my first hero, if you like. He was bullied at school, came home one day, and some thugs on the train had beat him with chains. And from that day forward, he started to build himself up. And Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conan the Barbarian were the heroes of the day. He and Lou Ferrigno, who was also the Hulk, the first or the original Incredible Hulk. And I watched my brother build himself up, and we didn't have a lot of money, and he fashioned dumbbells out of bricks and filled up old vacuum cleaners with sand and rubble and things like that. And Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan he had that on his school books. And I started reading his bodybuilding magazines and reading in with what Conan the Barbarian was doing. And I watched the movie. And the story of Conan the Barbarian is pretty much he's in the times that he lived. His village was slayed by the marauders, and they came in and they took them away, and they made Conan a bit of a slave. And little by little, he built himself into the man that he is, and he got revenge for his family's death. Now, the lesson that I think not only somebody said to me once, I shouldn't use one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 secrets for success is don't listen to the naysayers. And I'd like to say that most of the things I've achieved in life, I've achieved by the fact that I haven't actually listened to the naysayers, or if I have, I've done everything that I've done to prove them wrong. And in the case, somebody had said to me once, you shouldn't use that as a motivator. Now, they're a naysayer. And as I walked away, I thought, why not? It works. And I believe that anything that motivates you to success, as long as you can sleep with yourself at night, and as long as you're not hurting anybody else, and especially not hurting yourself, go for it. It might be some goal you set yourself as a kid that you actually never followed through with or gave up on. You still got the rest of your life to pick it up and follow up on it. They say we bury many men die at the age of 40, and we bury them when they're 70, meaning they've thrown the towel in and they've given up on their hopes and dreams. Now, I reckon the reason why we bury them at 70 rather than the average age being 80, 85 is that at 70, they've succumbed to all those illnesses and things that happen to us along the way. One of my clients is a doctor, and I said to her one day, it seems to me the human body is designed to fall apart. And she had said, and the human heart is designed to be broken. It was kind of a funny conversation that we'd had. But what I did take from that is, yes, the human body is designed to fall apart, but you use it or you lose it. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a man in his late 70s now, and he still has it about him, and you see him pushing away in the parks and all that sort of thing. So as far as a role model and a hero is concerned, for me, not only Conan the Barbarian, but the Terminator, the idea of the determination and the common determination that Arnold Schwarzenegger has had in a lot of his roles is that he has always wanted to be successful. If you don't know his story, kid from an Austrian village, father was a policeman, his brother they were both treated the same way, but his brother gave in and was a bit of a weakling and actually died in a drink driving accident when he was quite young. And quite often there's a story that Tony Robbins tells of twins. And one of them is a successful CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And his twin brother is a prisoner. And when the CEO is asked in an interview how he became so successful, and he said, well, with an alcoholic father like I had, what choice did I have? And the criminal brother was interviewed in another separate interview, unrelated, and they asked him, what did he believe led to his incarceration? And he said, well, with an alcoholic father like mine, what choice did I have? And so it's very much the idea of nurture versus nature, but choice and preference. I read an old story once of 2 dogs born in the same litter, and one was actually raised as a house dog and the other one was kept outside. This was the story. And one day they were both taken, a bowl was put in front of them, and the house dog sat down and started eating the bowl, and the yard dog started eating the bowl, and a rabbit went by, and the yard dog scooted off after it. And the house dog went back and kept going to the meal that it always knew was going to get there. So that was nurture and nature. But the yard dog has gone, can't risk not getting that rabbit, and chased after it. And so I think intrinsically we're all born with the similar traits that siblings, etc., and genetics have deemed upon us. But how we forge those genetics is what forges us as men and creates us as the role models for our children. And I often say, your children will look to you and they'll either want to be like you or they won't like you. Now, there's two ways about that. I didn't like my father as a young man, but I did want to be like him. There were certain, I didn't like him as a person because I thought he didn't like me because he was so hard on me. As life went on, and as I aged and got to know my father as a man, I became very much impressed by him as a man and wanted to model myself on him as a man. And I think as men and as fathers, our role is not to be our children's friend at the moment, but for them to have enough confidence and trust in us that they want to be who we are when they become to our age. I had lunch with my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law today, and they showed me a letter that their son had written, and they'd asked him to write how things are going at school. And in the letter he had written things along the lines of, nobody plays with me, and whatever he had written. And my brother-in-law had asked me what I should do, what he should do rather. And my advice to him was, listen, don't tell him when you were a little boy the same thing happened to you or didn't happen to you, or give him advice from a childlike perspective. Give him the advice based on your adulthood. And I used to get my daughters to open up about bullying at school or things like that by telling them what happened in my real life or my adult life. So I've encouraged my brother-in-law to say to him, hey, at school, in the office the other day, I said hello to somebody and they completely ignored me. What do you think I should do about that? They often say the best advice you give is the advice you don't take yourself. And as a coach, I'll be in coaching sessions and someone will come to me with a problem. And the problem wouldn't have been planned and I wouldn't have given it too much thought or even considered it beforehand. But as they ask me for my advice and I empathize with them, I think, oh, what would I do in that situation? And I give the advice based on how I feel and how I feel they would benefit. And quite often they'll say, I took your advice and that was great. It really worked. Thank you very much. But I myself will go along and think, how can I apply that advice in my life? Because I think I'd actually benefit from that, but I hadn't considered it before, and it works. So my advice in that regard is, don't speak to your children because they can't connect or relate to you as a father at their age. They just can't. They only see you as that adult. And the way to get the conversation out and to give them that advice is that even as a man, we're faced with these problems. But when you ask them for advice in that respect, you'd be amazed at the wisdom that they have in telling you advice on that. The next hero I bring up is Hercules, or Heracles as he's known in Greek mythology. There's some, when I say dark twists to the advice that I give, there's a lot about ancient mythology that we don't know and we don't hear in our modern stories. You know, Hercules there's a few iterations of it, of the movie, if you like, or the story, if you like. But Hercules, the real story of Hercules, where it starts, is that Hercules is the son of Zeus, and he's fathered through an illegitimate or a illicit affair, if you like. Zeus falls so much in love with Hercules' eventual mother that he forms the shape of her real husband and lies with her for quite a few days. The real husband, comes back from warring and doing those sort of things they did in Greek mythological days, and he's back from battle and he says, hey, I really, really miss you. And she's like, the wife's like, what? And off they go. Now, the story goes that she falls pregnant with two sons, one of each, one from Zeus the god and one from his real father or her real husband. And Hera, Zeus's wife, the goddess of heaven, jealous of this, sends two vipers down to kill the boys, and Hercules strangles both of them. And that's how they know who the god is. Now, as it turns out, or the immortal is, as it turns out, Hercules develops and stronger and stronger and stronger, but he's got a terrible temper. He kills tutors, he smashes, just breaks everything in his path. And eventually Hera, who is Zeus's wife, and jealous obviously of the fact that, you know, Zeus's infidelity with a mortal woman, puts a curse over Hercules where the mist clouds sets him into a fit of rage and he actually murders his wife and children. And when the mist wears off, he realizes what he's done. Now, metaphorically, his anger has cost him his wife and his family. Now, metaphorically, fratricide, as they call it, would be abhorrent, and we would never forgive ourselves. But when they talk about, there's a thing called death by 1,000 paper cuts. And Jacob Riis says it's not the first or the last blow of the sculptor's hammer that breaks the marble, but every single one of them. And how often are the little barbs or the little cranky things or the little ways in which we're angry and we don't control our temper chipping away at our partners and our children? And, the idea that a child, it's easier to, form strong children than to fix broken men, because between the ages of 2 and 5, we learn our lovability as children. Between the ages of 0 and 7, we learn how to think and act in the world and view the world. It's never too late. You can always, repair relationships with your children by just turning up. It's going to take you a lot longer to repair than obviously to build. And I remember saying to somebody once who commented on a teacup that I was drinking out of in a what's the word, putting me down, so to speak, and then they apologized. And I said, listen, if you break this cup and apologize, I can't drink out of it. And just be careful of how you speak to people, because you think sorry makes everything okay. Sorry means you won't do it again. And it's good to be sorry, but actions speak louder than words. For his crimes, Hercules was sent on the 12 labors. 12 challenges that he was given. The first of all was to slay the Nemean lion, which his hide was impenetrable. That's what he's wearing on his head, and had razor claws. And he used his strength and crushed it in most of these scenes. And I won't go through all of them. He did crush it. But along the way, Hercules also came across Antaeus. Now, Antaeus was the child of Poseidon, the sea god Poseidon, and the earth god Gaia. Now, Antaeus' strength came from the earth. Every time Hercules threw him to the ground, he got stronger and got back up. And this was the longest and hardest battle that Hercules ever faced. And it's not even considered one of his 12 challenges. The reason I put this in is because within the course of these role models and lessons, there are some of them that I want to impart some modern thinking to the ancient wisdom. Now, one of the things I encourage people to do from an anti-anxiety and to reduce stress perspective is earth to earth. Now, earthing is literally bare skin connection to the planet. At any one time, there are between 1,000 and 2,000 thunderstorms going on around the world, delivering 5,000 strikes to the planet, to the surface of the earth. Now, they're striking the planet with positive charges. And for people who don't believe the idea of circadian rhythms or earthing and things like that, I just say, hey, pull out a compass. About the only thing these things are good for, apart from taking photos of my children, I guess, is that there's actually a compass on your phone. You can get your compass out and it'll tell you where due north is. Now, that is based on, obviously, the world has a molten core, and it is on true north, the magnetic pull of the planet. Now, Einstein, obviously, when everyone talks about somebody who's a genius, they say Einstein. Einstein's fascination with science was the day somebody gave him a compass. And what's this magnetic pull that the planet has? And that started him on his journey to be a scientist, and obviously one of the greatest minds that has lived in recent times. I think he only died in the late 1800s or even the early 1900s. Anyway, my point of that is, in this story that Antaeus was recharged by the power of the planet, even the story of Richard Gere and Pretty Woman, he takes his shoes and socks off and gets to feel what it really feels like. Now, people say they don't have time to meditate, they don't have time to journal, they don't have time to, get out there and do what they have to do. If you are working from home and you're having to have a phone call or something like that, just walk out in your own backyard and stand on the grass. If you live by a beach or by the creeks or whatever, even better. Poseidon and Gaia, the sea god and the earth god, it's because of the earth and the water together are such phenomenal recharges of our system. And when I talk about being hungry, angry, lonely, tired, as far as things that incite us to rage or to anger, how are we repairing those? If you're not getting enough sleep, what could you do to improve that? Connect with the planet. If you travel a lot and you're outside of your time zone, and I tell people all the time, take your shoes and socks off, get on the ground. Best thing you can do is jump in the ocean, even lying on a beach. The reason we come back from holidays so relaxed is generally we spend a bit of time lying or connecting bare skinned to the earth. And most countries where the people are not so concerned about the greenhouse gas emissions or whatever the global warming effect is, are the people who are well up in high-rise buildings, who live under fluorescent lights and air conditioned all day long. So they don't really care about the environment because they're not necessarily exposed to it. The more time you spend out in the environment, the more time you actually appreciate its benefits. And I guarantee if you spend some time just standing on the ground outside, you'll feel a better connection. Now, when they say somebody's down, he's down to earth, that bloke. I like him. He's very, very grounded. Again, these things have come from not only ancient mythology, these stories, true or false, have come from some sort of a stimulus or stimuli, and that would be the fact that people have experienced the benefits of earthing. Now, this story is about Perseus. Perseus obviously was sent, long story, I won't go right into it, but I do have the backstory on any of these for you in the show notes that I prepared earlier, that if anyone wants them, david@leeway.com.au, and I'll send you each of these stories in my interpretation of them as I gave this talk to a high school recently, and I've just elaborated it for you gentlemen, but it was just succinct breakdowns on what these stories are. If you're interested, david@leeway.com.au, and I'll send you the stories. But Poseidon was sent to basically take the head off Medusa the Gorgon, who could turn you to stone with her gaze. And so the moral of the story, I guess, is his resilience. He didn't just go, oh, I can't do it. There was no way it could be done. He thought of all the different ways that it could, and eventually the gods helped him by giving him the mirror, but he was never to look into the eyes, which he didn't do. But the major takeout of this story is that such an insurmountable task he never gave up on, and he looked for every single way that he could do it. The Japanese call it the Kaizen theory, where if that doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. But quite often we go, oh, it just didn't work. Really? What happened? Did you try that? No. And I mean, my job, as I say, is to help people get out of their own way or go from great to phenomenal. How I do that is asking the questions of you that you're not asking of yourself. And Perseus asked the questions of his journey that nobody else had asked before. And when he turned up to where the Gorgon or Medusa lived, he thought all of these statues were around, had been carved, but they were the people who were turned to stone by Medusa because they looked in her eyes, despite being told not to. But the allure of her beauty had that effect on men. But he didn't do what others had done. And the idea I used to say to my children, you don't make a mistake. The first time you do something, it's never a mistake, it's a lesson. You do it again, then it's a mistake. You do it again and again and again, knowing you're going to hurt others or yourself, then it's either a crime or a sin, and so don't do it again. So my point here is always look for ways around, workarounds. Even as I say, when they say there's no shortcut on the extra mile, that saying was before there was planes, trains, or automobiles. So there are faster ways of doing things. There are better ways of doing things. Things such as simply as standing on the ground outside, as I say, is a greater recharger. When I feel like I'm really lacking on sleep or I haven't had a lot of sleep, I'll go and have a 1 hour float in a magnesium bath and I get 4 hours sleep back. It's a quick fix, but it's a smart fix. And I say it's not cheating the system, it's beating the system. Even when I have people over, they go, oh, you're really spoiling us. It's not spoiling, it's treating. I'm treating my friends to nice things. When people call the one day of the week where they go nuts a cheat day, it's not a cheat day, it's a treat day. You're not cheating. You're actually, cheating is when you're doing something that you know is wrong. If you have determined that Saturday is the day you're going to go bonkers because you don't have to work Sundays, you can sleep in, do it. If you can actually control yourself, not to look in the mirror of the 5 bottles of wine every day of the week. One day a week, you can go nuts, go nuts. If you can actually consume 8,000 calories in one day and 1,500 for the other 6, that actually resets the body into faster fat loss and a more sustainable muscle growth. And, I talk from experience. I've been doing the 1 day a week nuts for probably, 25 years now. And, every now and again on holidays, it might go longer than just the 1 day. So every now and again on holidays, I might come back, and whilst the campaign might have been fiddly or flexico, I've got to come back and go, righto, it's now got to get back down to ground work. But again, I knew that was the objective before I went on holidays. I don't go on holidays to eat salad. I go on holidays to do as the Romans do when I'm in Rome. Now, the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine, which is today's modern day Palestine. David was an Israelite, and the Israelites were, opposed by the Philistines. And they challenged any of the Israelites to fight him, and no one would. And David came along and he said, now I like the story, of course, because it's one of the first times I heard of my name referred to in any hero's story. And he came along, and the giant laughed at him, was a little bit offended, and with a sling, bang, again, in a different way, knocked the giant out and then chopped his head off with his own sword. I say it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. I didn't say that, Mark Twain did. But this is the classic story of that. And quite often, when I talk about the fairy tales of fate, and the fairy tales of fate's the next book I'm working on, and I would have spoken to you blokes about it not too long ago, as far as the things that we should have learned from fairy tales many, many years ago that we didn't, because now they're putting them on ice and commercializing them and taking the entire story out of it. And in fact, when I was talking to my brother-in-law today about the talk I was giving tonight, and I spoke about Hercules, he goes, oh, you should really watch it. The cartoon thing, and we're all talking about it. And I say to them, mention the fact that he killed his, no, well, they don't. And I said, well, of course they didn't. And they never talked about his anger. They never talked about the fact that he had this uncontrollable anger, and that was part and parcel of his 12 challenges, was to curb the anger and to go through the struggles and to learn who he was as a man. And self-awareness is where it all comes down to. Every single one of these heroes had to discover who they were before they became the hero. And in this case, little David knocks out big Goliath, because big Goliath didn't see past his own arrogance and strength. And little David believed in himself to actually be able to do what he did, and it saved the day for his people. Another one I wanted to talk about. Now, every single one of us men, and I might have spoken to you guys as well, one of the most Googled word from the Merriam Dictionary of 2021 was narcissist. And narcissist, the term narcissist was was a psychological term. Psychologists came up with it based on this character here, Narcissus. Now, Narcissus was another Greek mythological character who was told he would never ever die if he never got to know himself. So as long as he didn't really get to know who he was, he would never ever die. And along the way, he's traveling along the way, and one of the nymphs he comes across is Echo, and Echo was another Greek nymph, as in the female of the time that was cursed by the gods to actually have to repeat everything that everybody ever said. Now, when I look into this story, Narcissus didn't listen to her. He didn't speak to her. So he left her behind. He didn't listen to Echo, and so he didn't speak to her, rather, so she didn't echo back his words. And it was along the lines of the fact that I'm thinking about it from the men's perspective, that if you don't actually talk to your wives, then they'll stop listening to you. But the other part about the idea of echo is, if you're speaking to somebody and you want them to understand you, or at least empathize with you, or you want them to know that you're listening to you, and I've all taken you through the mnemonic, you need to be able to repeat back to them at least 3 words they have used in your response to them or in your conversation to them, in order for them to accept and understand that you are listening to them. Now, Narcissus went along and came across this pool, the Pool of Sorrows as it was called, And he looked in and he discovered himself, and he became infatuated with who he was. He became so infatuated with his own beauty that he didn't leave this pool. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep, he didn't drink, and he died by the pool. Legend has it that the little daffodils, which are now called Narcissus flowers, are named after him. How psychologists have used that in referencing some men's behavior is where it's all going to be awry, because someone's obviously gone and seen the psychologist and gone, sounds like your husband's a narcissist. You should do this, that, and the other. She's gone home and told her girlfriends, and her girlfriends have told their girlfriends, and all of a sudden we're all narcissists. Now, what I say is my belief in true narcissism is if you truly love yourself, then you look after yourself. I think somebody who's in their 60s who is fit as a fiddle, that's more impressive to me as success than somebody who's in their 60s and has 20 Lamborghinis and is riddled with illnesses and is sick. You know, that to me, and mentally sick as well, because as a man thinketh, so he becomes. So physiology is psychology. You know how you feel before a workout, during a workout, and after a workout. In fact, there was a UK study done in 2007 on gym attendance in the UK in 2007, that just the idea of going and doing a workout increased your positive mental attitude by 28%. So 28% better than what I'm going to do a workout. I feel 28% better. Good on me. The idea that you then get into the gym made you 64% higher than the first decision. Again, so getting up to 100% better than the idea of thinking, what am I going to do this afternoon? Might watch some telly, I'll go to the gym. After the workout, the cumulative effect of positive mental attitude was 200% better than beforehand. And we all know this. And we all know that running is hard because it's hard. And yesterday I went on the first run that I had done since I had a back operation last November, but I went for the first run that I've done since probably August, September, in well over a year. I ran around an oval 3 or 4 times and I could have gone longer. I was so, at first it was a bit tough and I was just a bit of a jog and all that sort of thing. And then at the very end of it, I wanted to go sprinting and I thought, no, slowly catch the monkey. And I think what happens is we try to do too much too soon and we hurt the ultimate effect. So great thing. It was very hard. And as I went on now, I was buzzing for the rest of the day. And it's a feeling I hadn't had for quite some time because I haven't run. But self-care, I was doing it for self-care. So as far as Narcissus is concerned and what we could learn from him, from the ancient wisdom, is have a healthy self-respect for yourself, but don't be oblivious to those around you, and look after yourself so that you can look after your family. It should be such that your partner's saying, wow, I like that you're looking after yourself. It should be such that you're doing it in times that is not, as in looking after yourself, compromising the time you should be spending with your partner. In a perfect world, train together. Now, I did run around that oval yesterday with my partner. The idea was she wanted to go on the road. I said, no, we'll do it on the grass because I haven't run on a road for a while. So it was a combined thing. And when I talk about mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance as your masters of mastery, if you can combine them, it's a brilliant thing. So if you could mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, do exercise together with somebody, you're ticking all the boxes. It's cheap, it's free, all that sort of business in a lot of cases, and you're getting on with things. Now, back to the narcissist thing. If somebody's calling you a narcissist, don't just completely ignore them like Echo, as in, or treat them like Echo, but do think to yourself, okay, what is it that I'm doing that makes you think that? Now, they'll say immediately, it's a question like that. And say, okay, well, I just want to understand and be calm. That's an open-handed, non-confrontational style of conversation with a partner. You say, listen, I just want to understand. And I want to understand what I need to be doing to make you happier so that we are happier. And I think if you can have those sort of conversations, and again, little by little, a little becomes a lot, but you have to start somewhere. So don't be too dismayed by the terminology of narcissism. Do be dismayed if you're being called a gaslighter, because, again, gaslighting is one of those things that they're saying that you're saying things about them that aren't true. But I think most importantly, be careful and aware of the fact you may be gaslighting yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. There's a fine line between being too full of yourself and too empty of yourself. And I think if you can meet yourself halfway with that self-awareness and self-understanding that, if it's to be, it's up to me, and the healthy balance, the idea of win some, lose some, that sort of thing, but I'm going to get up and try again. I'm going to get up and try again, going to get up and do it again. The next one is Sisyphus. So Sisyphus was another character who, at the end of the day, he betrayed Zeus. He went and started talking about Zeus's infidelities to people, and Zeus found out about it. And so he was destined for eternity to push this rock up the hill. And when it got to the top of the hill, it would roll back down. The daily grind, as they call it. Now, when I say to people, what did you eat? How's your diet? And they go, oh, it's pretty good. And I say, what did you eat in the last 24 hours? Well, I ate rubbish. Great. What did you do? You are what you did in the last 24 hours. You are what you read. You are who you spoke to. You are the relationship you have with your partner. You are the food that you ate. You are the way that you moved. You are the conversation you have with your son or daughter. You are the conversation you have with your boss or colleagues. That forms the way you are today, good or bad. And only you can control how you respond to that. Good old Sisyphus had to push that rock up the top and know that his lot in life was that. Now, that's life. And if life was easier to be boring, there was an old bank ad that used to have a little Shetland pony, and the Shetland pony would say certainty. People like certainty because that's what the banks were pushing, that you could be certain that their interest rate was going to remain the same or go up and down. No, it would be exactly what it was on your fixed loan of interest. And people do like certainty. But the only constant in life is change. And the only thing that is certain in life is the uncertainty of life. So sure, there's a level of predictability, and I write goals and I write lists and I have a plan so that I have an overall idea of what's going to go on in each day. But I also have that behavioral flexibility so that I have a plan B and I have a plan C. And I also have a plan retreat. I have let's just duck away for a while. This isn't working. I need to sit back and lick my wounds and get some perspective on the way the world's working, because it seems a little bit overwhelming at the moment. And when I do that, I generally sit down and I'll do a bit of journaling, and I encourage people to do the same. And when they do the same, they go, oh, I got a bit more clarity. Or I'll do a bit of breathing exercises, the physiological sigh, and I love it when people tell me that they've tried it, and I was in the midst of it. But as I say, do it beforehand, don't do it during. I wore sunscreen to my sister's house today, just did it anyway. And as it turned out, she sat us in the backyard and boom, out came the sun. And I was, oops, yep, no, I've got sunscreen on. I'm prepared for that. All of this preparation is preparing for the fact that it's going to get back down to the bottom again and you're going to start. Now, what you will find is as life goes on, the rocks, you get so used to pushing that boulder up a hill every day that it just becomes one of those things you do. I like to say my micro habits were at one stage macro habits. My morning routine and evening routine were at one stage very difficult to do. The idea that I even turned off my go to bed alarm before I started here tonight is because a couple of times it's gone off while I've been talking. Ouch, ouch, ouch. You put your hand on a hot fire and keep burning, then you're an idiot. You learn from your mistakes, and autodidacticism. There's one to look up. Autodidacticism pretty much means self-taught. And if you're a self-taught person, then you learn from your mistakes. If someone has told you where the potholes in the road are and you don't actually take their advice, then you're an idiot. Don't be so hard on yourself. An idiot is one of those things that I do call myself when I do stupid things. But immediately I say, no, you're not an idiot. Drop that, get over it, and get on with it. So life does go on, and life is like pushing a big boulder up a hill every single day, but eventually it comes around and you do get used to it. Now, the screams of the sirens. So there's a song that, now the story of the sirens is from Homer's Iliad and Odysseus. Odysseus had the challenge of, a bit like Hercules, but not as strong, etc., but learned from all of his mistakes. Now, the Song of the Sirens, you know, I had a dream about Elmer first the other night, quite funnily enough, and I just remembered it then, funny. Not the one you'd think, but, you know, however, the sirens, the way that Odysseus rather resisted the songs of the sirens, and what the sirens were, again, mythological characters from Greek mythology who would entrance the sailors with their song. And the sailors would they'd smash, the ships would smash on the rocks. Long story short, Odysseus got over that was he put the wax in all of the men's ears and he tied himself to the mast of the ship so he could actually see the sirens to see what he was resisting the allure of. And they were these beautiful women. This is from the Australian depiction with Norman Lindsay, which the Norman Lindsay Art Gallery is in the town that I was brought up in, Spring under the Blue Mountains. Bit of trivia. The reason I included this was twofold. The thing is, don't believe everything you hear. And when somebody tells you something you're not quite sure of, ask them, how do you know that to be true? I'm confounded, not dumbfounded, these days by how many times people tell me things and I go, how do you know that to be true? Because it is. And then they'll go, hey, Siri, can you tell me how blah, blah, blah is? And then Siri will come back with something that wasn't anything like what they just told me it was. And you know, you'd be surprised how many times they say, see, wasn't what you just said. Anyway, don't always be believing every single thing you hear. Cut it out, Siri. Anyway, my point about that as well, there's two things. There is a song that has been proven more than any other song or a piece of music, rather. It's called Weightless. And again, I have the link to that. If anyone wants it, david@leeway.com.au, that listening to this song for just 3 minutes will reduce your anxiety levels and depression levels. After 3 minutes, not like that, but 3 minutes. It's a 7-minute song, but it goes after 3 minutes of all of the songs that people who are suffering from anxiety and depression were exposed to. This song was the most effective at reducing their anxiety. It is based on the beats of the music, the hertz of the music, and it's something that is very, very beneficial in reducing anxiety. Now, everybody experiences anxiety of some shape, way, or form, either on a daily basis or at some stage. A little bit of a, you know, eventually you get to the stage where you either go, well, okay, I said to my daughter, who's a psychologist, how does somebody know whether they're having a panic attack or not? And she said, well, I guess they don't until they don't die. And quite often when you experience anxiety, it's like, well, what am I anxious about? And I know people who say, I don't know what I'm anxious about, but every single morning I wake up with anxiety. And there's a thing called hyperintensity, where the fact that you don't want to have anxiety is why you have anxiety. Try not to think of a pink elephant, and you cannot do anything but try to get to sleep after you've been woken up in the night, and you can't do anything but. My thing is, wake up, or full lungs rather. That's the physiological sigh. The whole way it works is basically breathing out longer than what you did breathe in, increasing the carbon dioxide, which relaxes you, puts you in the parasympathetic state, takes you from fight and flight to rest and relax, for those of you who haven't heard that before. But the physiological sigh, also listening to the tune or the song Weightless, and I'll find that as say if anyone wants that. But there's another thing I want to talk to you guys about, which is binaural beats, if you haven't heard about it, which is two opposing sounds playing at the same, from different levels, playing at the same time. Now, I listen to these binaural beats while I'm preparing these sort of presentations, as in focusing, and it's great for focus, again, any anxiety, any depression, but clarity, mental clarity. And I think where anxiety and depression have the ability to plant their roots and have those roots take hold is the fact that they have space that is positive for them. It's negative space, but it's space that you've allowed. When I talk about the rider and the horse, you're the rider and the horse is your emotions. If you don't rein them in, as soon as you see that the horse is going off, then the horse will go, and it'll be very, very hard to control. The idea of reining anxious thoughts or depressive thoughts in before they take hold is, again, sunscreen for the mind. You prevent them rather than preempt them. And if you're predisposed to anxiety or depression, or dark thoughts or whatever it is, prevent them before they come about. And the way to prevent them, exercise is the panacea for everything. If you smoke, drink, eat fatty foods, and exercise, you will live longer than somebody who doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't eat crappy food, and doesn't exercise. Exercise is the panacea. Exercise is the one thing that will take you, it raises your endorphin levels, it raises your confidence levels. It's during the course of exercise, you're probably the closest to if they put markers on you, your blood pressure through the roof, your acidity through the roof, your heart rate through the roof. But in the recovery, you're actually more vital. Your vitality is greater than it'll ever be for the next 24 to 38 hours, depending on the intensity or the metabolic conditioning that you do. Again, I've got a metabolic conditioning workout that if you did it for 20 minutes every day, boom, through the roof, david@leeway.com.au. Send me an email and I'll send that to you. So listen to the binaural beats. Beware of not listening to the call of the siren. The next one I've backed that up with is Samson and Delilah. Now, Samson, again, the time of the Philistines, rather. The first I ever heard of Samson, of course, I was the 10-year-old boy reading the old-fashioned Bible. Many years later in a sales training course, this is when telephone sales was a big thing. And the thing that it said was, Samson, because he was so strong, he killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass, is what he did in biblical terms. And this quote said, Samson killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. And every day, salespeople kill however many phone calls with exactly the same tool, because of what they say rather than how they listen to the client. Now, Samson, after having defeated 1,000 or so of these Philistines, had become quite a source of pain for them. So they sent Delilah in, who was the beautiful seductress, who came along, and she said to Samson, he saw her, and she asked him where his strength lay. And he said, my strength lays in the fact that if you get me drunk and tie me with these brand new vines, my strength is gone. Turns out that didn't work. Oh, Samson, you don't really love me. She got him drunk again, shaved his head, because he told her the secret was in his hair. She cut his hair, and the Philistines got him and blinded him and tied him to the pole. They all mocked him, and he eventually grew his hair back and knocked the temple down. Now, what I'm saying is here, there's strength and heroism in Samson, but there's also, like the song of the sirens, this story is about temptation and lust. And you may not be playing around on your partner. You may have a very good resolve, but even things like pornography. Now, my daughter, who's the psychologist, she sent me her thesis today, her final thing. She's done and dusted. Dad, can you have a look over this? And her final thesis was done on gambling addictions. And for years, I have said that I believe the only mental illness that you can't hide is that of obesity. When I say the only mental illness, obesity shows a lot of underlying problems, whether it's an insecurity, whether it's an overindulgence, whatever it is. Obesity is the one thing you can't hide, really. Of all mental, the most dangerous mental illness to have is that of anorexia, because people stop eating. The body can't live without food for longer than 3 weeks. Anorexia is a form of control. The person who is anorexic thinks, well, I have no control in any other area of my life, but at least I can control what I eat, and whether that's an apple a day or whatever it is. Now, having said that, after reading my daughter's thesis on gambling, I thought, well, a gambling addiction is difficult to hide because money gets, bank accounts get emptied and things like that. The determinants behind why people gamble from her research and within the thesis were to either for the thrill of the game, from an escapist perspective, to get away from the way they felt about themselves, about their situation, or whatever. Now, could be hidden if you've got boatloads of money, fine. But an addiction to pornography, I think, is betrayed, or you're betraying yourself in, one, your inability to perform, two, your inability to find your partner as attractive as you once did, particularly for children. younger teenagers or whatever got onto it, they get an unrealistic expectation of what women really are like. And so they have an idealized sense of that. And in most cases, you've got the perfect storm, which is socially, they're playing video games, bored, all right, pause, jerk off, come back. So they're not even hunting for it because they won't get rejected by the porno. They have to buy them flowers or dinner. Whatever it goes on, it's one of those things that as much as the sounds of the siren or the pretty girl on accounts or at the supermarket or the girl who gives you the wink and the nudge that your partner's not doing it because you haven't done it. As I say, if you treat the relationship at the beginning like you did it, if you treat the relationship at the end like you did at the beginning, there'll be no end. And so you don't need a Delilah. You don't need the sounds of the sirens. If you're paying attention to Delilah, who's sitting right next to you or lying right next to you in the home. As I say, bring it up on date night. If you're not having date night at least once a week, date night doesn't necessarily have to involve the top of the town, but there's a couple who live near me, and the fellow said to me, how often do you seem to be always going out on date night? And I said, I do it as often as I can. He says, ours is just once, he's German. Ours is just once a month. And I said, why don't you bring it to once every 3 weeks then? If that's the best you can do, why don't you bring it to once every 3 weeks? Then you're 1 week better than that. Now, it turns out, he said to me I saw him, setting up the table and all that. Now they're doing date night once a week. They're walking along, holding hands. Their relationship's completely changed. But it takes someone to make the first step. And I was talking to somebody the other day about the idea of being the bigger person. And JFK said, to whom much is given, much is required. And there are those amongst you who would have been told throughout the course of your life, you have to be the bigger person. And if you keep thinking to yourself, why do I always have to be the bigger person? It's because you are. And by being the bigger person, that's a bit of an accolade. And you may not want to have to be the bigger person, but if you have the ability to be the bigger person, be the bigger person, because you're going to win in the end. At the end of the game, when it's all over and done, when they say in the final analysis, you're going to look back on your life and you're going to think to yourself, sure, I had to be the bigger person, and I did this and I did that and I did this. But even on a daily basis, when you're journaling and you say what you did and what you overcame, they're the 12 stages or the 12 challenges of Hercules. He overcame them all, and you will overcome everything, but you have to be persistent and you have to be consistent. Now, Thor's pretty much the last one I've talked to, and I think I'm coming in on good time here. Thor, there you go. Thor wasn't necessarily worthy to carry the hammer until he curbed his arrogance. And I think the difference between an arrogant person and a confident person is that arrogant people really are insecure. They wish they were better than what they are. When I say there's no shortcuts on the extra mile, but you can get there quicker, cutting corners is a different thing altogether. When you actually don't metamorphosize into the man you're supposed to be, you will come against the things that will happen to you along the way. I don't know whether I ever told you blokes the story of when I was a kid, I used to sell cicadas and I made money out of them. And I found it was a lot easier when I would, spray the trees with water and then shake them. They'd fall to the ground with their wet wings and I'd sell them, and I was making good money out of them. And then I worked out if I could get them out of the ground in their shells and put them on towels and hatch them, I could get a lot more of these. And a kid asked me one day whether or not there was such a thing as a gold cicada. And I said, there is, my friend. And he said, how much are they? And I said, $10. Now, I was charging $1 for the green ones and 50 cents for the black ones. Again, aging myself, but the 50 cents, the black ones were everywhere and they were easy. I could pick them up off the lawn of a morning. And the green ones took a little bit more work. So the kid gave me the $10, and this is where the whole business became undone, because what I had done was with the $10, I went home and I went to a newsagent, I bought a gold pen and I colored the greengrocer in gold. And I gave it back to the kid, and the gold paint had stuck the wings of this thing. And so he's got into class and he's croaking this thing and crank, crank, and the teacher took it off him and its wings wouldn't open. Where'd you get this from? Why'd you do that? And you go, no, David Lee. And so I got called in front of the principal. Now, when my father found out about it, he said, what have you been doing with the money? And I said, I've been keeping it. And I had a pillow slip under my bed, pillowcase rather, of coins. And I took this down, and my mother tells me that there was more money in that pillowcase than my father was making in a week, which, you know, the season of cicadas is very short. And I had, you know, probably another 2 weeks left. And my father had said, because the principal had said, you got to get the money and you got to give it back to these kids. Now, I'm one of 6 brothers, and all my brothers were sent by Dad with me. And I had to go back to these kids, and each of my brothers said, you got your cicada. You're not getting your money back. You okay with that? Yeah. If anyone asks, you got your money back. You okay with that? Yeah. It was a good deal. They all got their money, and they weren't necessarily bullied, but they were, I guess, scared into not getting their money back. None of these kids ever asked their money back. It was something from the principal. And I don't know what ever happened after that. But my father did say, is there a way we can keep the jig going? How could you do it? And I said, well, yeah, there is. And so as it turned out, from that day on, for the next couple of weeks, my brothers and I went out of a night time with flashlights, and we were getting all of these from far and wide. And we had so many towels set up with these things on them that we had quite a business going. One of the things that I did, and this is where this story is coming from, is in order to quicken the process, because at one stage we were late and I had to get to bed and all that sort of thing, I got a razor blade and I cut the back of the shell of the cicadas so they come out quicker. And the next morning when I woke up, and I would normally open it up, and I'd pull the cicadas off the towels and I'd put them in an ice cream container with the peach, we had peach trees in our backyard, the peach leaves, and off they'd go, and I'd set the cicadas on the bus and wherever it was. But because I had cut the shells, I had actually impeded the metamorphosis process. And each of the cicadas had these little wings. They hadn't developed. What the cicada needs to do is to come out of the shell, lean backwards. The wings have to pump, 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 pump with the heartbeat. Then that goes through that, then it climbs up and it flies off into the night. That's the process. Because I had retarded the process, so to speak, they hadn't fully developed. Clearly, no one wanted to buy those cicadas, and it was a big hit to the business. But what my point here is that even Thor had to go through the process of becoming a man and becoming a hero without shortcutting it. He was born this god of thunder, but he had to learn the lessons that he had to go through in life. And we never stop learning. We should never stop learning. And we should be driven. The one thing, I did have another character, Achilles. What I was basically going to bring up about Achilles is, yes, he was a hero. The major thing he had was his loyalty to his friends. But back on the exercise front, the one thing that'll derail your exercise and your ability to run, walk, jump, whatever it'll be, if you pop an Achilles tendon. So whilst you're training, always warm up the calves, make sure you do a little slight jog. But there's a thing called tib raises, where if you step up on your heels and lift your toes, you will actually build the front muscle of the tibia, which I think is called the soleus. It is. And that will help you not pop an Achilles tendon. The last thing I was going to say is that when I did meet Arnold and he talked about the drive and all that sort of business, it was the idea that he didn't win his first bodybuilding competition, but he didn't quit. He didn't get his first business deal off the ground, but he didn't quit. All those things that, you know, we want in life, and we say, you know, we give up on. And that's where we come into our biggest problem, is the idea that we give up on the way that we're viewing ourselves in life. We give up on the plans that we have. We give up on our partners. Some of us give up on our children, which we should never do. And I think if the greatest thing you can take out of tonight is that these stories were all written. I mean, there's heroes I could have added. I could have put Jesus in there. I could have put Gandhi in there. I actually had to kind of cull some of the characters and try to keep it as relevant as I could. Gandhi in Christ preached peace rather than war. Gandhi could have had 1 billion Indians at his disposal, or who were behind him. They did things peacefully. Martin Luther King, again, they did things peacefully. They didn't fight. They weren't aggressive. And I think as men, the one thing we have working against us is testosterone and rage. And even if you don't think you're capable of it, you are. It's in our nature. And the difference between, as I say, I spoke about nature and nurture and drive. Be driven to nurture your nature. Be driven to say, this is my nature. This is who I am. I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm capable of from a good perspective, and I know what I'm capable of from a bad perspective. And at the end of the day, I like to say, you know, there's a thing called Pascal's wager. And Blaise Pascal was a mathematician. One of the things he said that I like is he said he believes that the problems of mankind are purely the fact that men have the man's inability to sit alone in a room for half an hour without any other stimulation other than his thoughts. And I think if you do set time aside to sit with just your thoughts around what the problems of life and the meaning of life is for you, the Pascal's wager is, if there's no afterlife and you lived a great life, then you lived a great life. If there is no hell or underworld or whatever you call it, and you lived a bad life, then you still lived a bad life. So the wager is live a good life, right or wrong, eternity or no eternity, whatever it is you believe in, live a good life. And only you know what a good life is, and only you know what a good life feels like. And within you is that hero, the modern day hero, who all of these lessons that have been written for 3,000 years, Buddha was born 500 years before Christ. These messages, lessons, religions, you know, spiritualities, guides, they're all there for us to learn from. And I encourage you, I asked my father when I was 8, when do you die? And he said that you die the day you stop learning. He was giving my 8-year-old self the child's version of the day you think you know it all, or the day you stop even trying to learn it all, that's the day you die. And you die inside. If you feel dead inside, only you can resurrect yourself. Only you can be your own hero. And it starts now. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. And once you make that commitment to yourself to be driven, and no one's going to do it for you, drive. That's it. Drive yourself to where you want to go and where you want to be and what you want to achieve in life. And only you can do it. Now, with that, gentlemen, I'm going to drive myself to bed just down the hallway. I appreciate your time. It's always a privilege. If there is anything I can help you with, as I say, I've been doing these 15-minute calls and discovery sessions where people ask me questions about the programs that I offer and whether or not they're worthwhile. There's just over 90 days. There's just over 12 weeks till Christmas, till the new year. That's the perfect time to start on a new program that'll get you kicking off 2024 as your best year ever. Now, 2023 has been my best year ever. 2022 was my best year ever. And 2021 was my best year ever. 2024 will be my best year ever as well, because I have plans in place and they start today. Gentlemen, good evening. David@leeway.com.au. Send me an email if you like any of this, and if you'd like any of the show notes, I'll send them to you and this presentation as well. Good evening and be well.